Hi guys! Today I am going to be doing my March wrap-up. I read 18 books in March, which I am pretty happy with, even though a lot of them were very small books. In case anyone was curious about my 31 books in 31 days challenge, which I talked about in my March TBR, I knew I wasn't going to read all 31 books when I set myself that challenge, but I didn't think I would fail at it this badly. March just unexpectedly ended up being a really busy and stressful month, and so whenever I had time to myself, I just wanted to do mindless things, which I know that reading can be that for other people, but for me, because I always have so much on my mind wanders away from the page so quickly that I have to concentrate so hard when I read, so it no longer becomes a mindless thing for me. So just because of that, and also I DNF'd a lot of books this month, I read some 1-star books this month, so it really set me back. But yeah, I'm still happy with how much I read. 18 books is really good, even though they were very short. Since I do have so many to talk about, you might want to grab some popcorn or a drink or a snack, because this is probably going to take a while. The first book that I read in March was A Monster Calls by Patrick Ness. I'm sure a lot of people probably know what this book is about, and if you don't, it is like a middle grade novel that follows this boy whose mom has cancer and he's kind of having a hard time dealing with it, and this monster shows up in his backyard and tells him stories every few nights. I know a lot of people love this book, and it's not my normal kind of read. I very much like to read books for entertainment, and so when I know a story is going to be sad like this one is, I tend to just stay away from them. But when so many people like them, and there have been the odd book here or there that are like this, I love, give 5 out of 5 stars, but this one just didn't really do it for me. I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars, I think. I liked it. I thought the message behind it and everything, it was so good, but it's just not my kind of story, if you get what I'm saying. And I didn't cry because I don't think it affected me the way that I know it could affect other people who, you know, have been close with people who have cancer or had cancer. But I have never been close to someone who has had that, so it didn't really touch me like I know it could touch other people. As far as this book goes, forget my entertainment opinion on it, it was a really good book. I love the illustrations. This particular copy doesn't have it, so I got a copy from the library that had illustrations in it, and I loved them. And I really liked the stories that the monster told the boy. So yeah, overall, I think it's a really amazing book that could be great for other people, but it's just not my kind of story. Next, I read Clara Mandrake's Monster. This is a book that was sent to me in exchange for an honest review from the author, so if you want to learn all of my thoughts on this book, you can click the link in the eye up in the corner to watch that video. I don't really want to go over my thoughts again here because I gave this book 1 star. I did not like this book at all. Let's move on. So then I read The Tangled Lands by Paolo something I don't know how to say and Tobias S. Buckle. This is an ARC copy that was sent to me from Wonderkind PR, so thank you so much to them for sending me this book. This is a adult high fantasy novel that is kind of told in 4 short parts that follow different characters, but they're all set in this land where magic is forbidden, and if you're caught doing magic, you're executed. So it's basically like a collection of 4 short stories that each follow a different character, but they're all set in the same world. Had I known that, I probably would have stayed away from this book because I just don't like short story collections, and I kind of thought that maybe at the end all of their stories would interweave, but that didn't really happen, and I just wasn't a big fan of any of the characters. They weren't particularly likable. I didn't connect with any of them, which y'all know is a big part of reading for me, and overall the story I didn't find that great, so I also gave this book 1 star, which is unfortunate, but I know a lot of other people were really excited about this book, and I think it definitely could be a great book for other people. It just wasn't for me. So then I picked up Daughter of the Pirate King by Trisha Levenseller. This is the first book in a duology that follows this female pirate who in the first book purposefully lets herself be captured by these other pirates in order for her to try and find a map that is hidden somewhere on their pirate ship. So originally I gave this book 3.75 out of 5 stars, but kind of the more that I thought about it, and upon DNFing the sequel, I decided to lower my rating to a 3 star. So right off the bat, I just want to say that I think this book is super falsely advertised. A lot of people I've seen just on BookTube and reviewers reviewing it have compared it to Pirates of the Caribbean, which it is, besides that they're both about pirates, there has no kind of similarity between them. But then also just right on the front of the book it says, "Readers should rejoice because we now have a Lady Jack Sparrow on our hands." And let me tell you, I love Jack Sparrow. I want to be a Lady Jack Sparrow, but she was not. Besides the fact that they were both pirates, they really had no kind of similarities. Like, she had a couple like one-liners, but besides that, she seemed completely sane, and it even mentioned that she didn't drink that often, so I was like, this is nothing like Jack Sparrow. I just wanted to say that right off the bat, that if you're thinking that this is going to be anything like Pirates of the Caribbean, Jack Sparrow, anything like that, it is not at all. Now on to like my actual thoughts on the book besides that. So as I said, there were a couple of one-liners in here that I liked, and it was a very entertaining story. I enjoyed all of the pirate aspects of the story, but there is a whole siren part of the story that I just wasn't a fan of, and that is why I DNF'd the sequel, which is Daughter of the Siren Queen, because that one focused very heavily on the siren part, and I just wasn't into that. I'm pretty sure there's only one other siren book I've ever read, which was The Siren by Kira Cass, and there's a reason for that, because no other siren book really catches my interest. I don't know why, but I just don't have any interest in that kind of thing. So the whole siren part of this story I just didn't like, but I loved the pirate aspect. I honestly don't think I've ever read a pirate book at all, besides like Peter Pan or something like that. So I'd love to see more pirate books out there. But yeah, overall it was just kind of like a light, fun read. It wasn't amazing, and just because of the siren aspect, I think that kind of lowered my rating a little bit. Next book I read was a short story called The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. I'm sure a lot of people have read this book or know what it's about at least, and I can't really give you a synopsis of it because it is a very short story, so anything I could possibly say would like spoil half of it. But you guys may know that last month I read We Have Always Lived in the Castle and The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and I wasn't a big fan of either of those books, but a couple people recommended this book to me, and it is probably her most famous work. But I have to say that I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars, and it was definitely my favorite out of all her work that I've read so far. I don't want to say that I liked it because it was a very morbid story, but I think it was very well done and clever, and yeah, I thought it was very good. Next up, I read 10 by Gretchen McNeal. This is a YA modern retelling, sort of And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, which is one of my all-time favorite books. I read it last year, and after I read it, I heard about this book, and I immediately added it to my TBR, but I'm so sad that I waited so long to read this because I surprisingly sort of really enjoyed this book. So it follows 10 teenagers who are invited to a party on this island, and then they start getting killed off, as you could imagine if you know what And Then There Were None is about. And so I say I enjoyed it surprisingly because there was a lot of like high school drama that happens in this book, and that's just not my thing at all. In books, movies, TV shows, anything, I can't stand high school drama, but in this book I think it worked in a way that I could enjoy it, or at least put up with it for the other elements of the story that were really good, because like the mystery and the suspense elements of this story were really good. I read this book in a day, in 2 sittings, which is super rare. I'm that kind of reader that has to read for 10 minutes and do something else, and read for 10 minutes and do something else. So reading a book in like 1, 2, 3, 4 sittings is like out of the question for me. So the fact that I read this in 2 sittings is very impressive for this book. I just found this book to be so suspenseful and gripping that I just couldn't take a break from it. I just had to know what was going to happen next, and I'm slightly ashamed. I kind of pride myself on, like, when it comes to thrillers and horrors, books or movies, knowing who the killer is going to be, and in this book I was sure who it was, and I turned out to be wrong, which I should have seen it coming from a mile away. But even though thinking I knew who it was from the very beginning, I still found it to be very suspenseful. Even though I was sure what the ending was going to be, just still in those moments I was like, oh, what's gonna happen? Yeah, I think this book was very well done. The only reason that I didn't give it a full 5 stars, which I don't even know if I mentioned a rating on this, but I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. The only reason I didn't give it a full 5 stars was because of the high school drama aspect. As I said, I still am not the biggest fan of that, and also there were a couple of like spelling or grammar mistakes in here. But besides that, I thought it was very well done. So if you like YA mysteries or thrillers, or if you liked And Then There Were None by Agatha Christie, you should definitely try and pick this one up. Then I read Batman Nightwalker by Marie Lu. This is the second book in the new like DC superhero novel series, whatever it's called. This follows Bruce Wayne before he is Batman when he's 18 years old. I considered this book to be more of like a mystery adventure novel than like a superhero book, because obviously it's before he's Batman, so there's not a lot of like superhero elements to it, which I think is what saved this book for me, because I gave it 4 out of 5 stars, which was again, pretty surprising for me because I kind of took a chance on this book. When it comes to movies, I do not like superhero films. I only watch like the Avengers simply for Loki's character, and that is it. But I think because this book didn't really have those kind of super power elements to it, I enjoyed it a little bit more because it was more of like a mystery sort of book. And yeah, because I don't watch superhero movies, I have never seen a Batman film and I know absolutely nothing about him. So as to whether this was like accurate to like the movies or the comic books or something like that, like I have no idea. But I really enjoyed the characters, I really enjoyed the story. The writing was very fast paced and it flowed very well, and it was just a very entertaining read. I enjoyed it, and I also read this one in one day as well, so that's saying something about this book. Then I read another sort of short story classic, which was Lost in a Pyramid, sometimes also referred to as The Mummy's Curse by Louisa May Alcott. Now I'm second guessing myself, but I'm about 99% sure that this is the same author who wrote Little Women, which Little Women is not my like kind of style of story, so I've never read that, but I definitely prefer these like kind of horror classics. This is a part of a Penny Dreadfuls anthology that I have, so I read it and I enjoyed this one as well. I think I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't like amazing, you can't really like connect to the characters because it is such a short story, but I thought it was very well done. Again, it is so short that I can't really like give you a synopsis on it besides that it's about a mummy's curse, so that should pretty much sum it up for you. So the next book I read was actually for the rereadathon, so this was a reread for me, and that was Wonderstruck by Brian Selznick. One of the challenges for the readathon was to reread a book and give it a second chance, so I decided to do that with this book. Those of you who don't know, Brian Selznick also wrote The Invention of Hugo Cabret, which is one of my all-time favorite books, and I have read that one multiple times. Also writes all of his books with a lot of pictures in them, so they look like super chunky, but they're actually super quick reads. They have beautiful illustrations in them. I love the illustrations. So yeah, basically this book I had read years ago when I'd first read The Invention of Hugo Cabret, and I loved it so much, so I wanted to read the rest of his work, so I picked up this one. But I think at the time I loved The Invention of Hugo Cabret so much that no book could possibly be anywhere near how awesome it was, so I ended up, well, Goodreads, like I didn't have a Goodreads at the time of originally reading this, but I probably would have given it like a 2-star rating, whereas this time when I read it, I think I gave it 4 stars. So if you don't know what this book is about, I would consider it to be a historical fiction book. It follows 2 characters in 2 different points in time. So one character, I believe it takes place in the 1920s, and another one is in the 1970s, and one character's story is told through words and the other one is told through the illustrations, and then we see how their stories kind of interweave at the end. And I really enjoyed this book reading it the second time around. I think the age I was probably at when I originally read this book, I don't think I would have been able to fully appreciate the story. I can't remember how old I was when I originally read it, but it was probably like 12 or 11 or something. One of the things I definitely didn't realize when I originally read it was the great representation in this book, because both of the main characters are deaf, which is definitely something that I think is not represented enough in literature as a whole, especially not like middle grade, because I would consider this to be a middle grade book. There's definitely not anything in it that would be inappropriate for middle graders, even if it is considered to be YA or something. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book and I would definitely recommend it to anyone and everyone. And then finally, I read books 1 through 9 in the 39 Clues series. This is a middle grade series that I had read originally books 1 through 7 when I was much younger, and then I never actually finished the series, which I've been super bummed about all these years. So I finally decided to reread books 1 through 7 and then read books 8 through 10 for the first time. I didn't quite get through all of the 10th book this month, so that will be in my April wrap-up, but for now I'm going to go over all of the rest of these books. If you don't know what the 39 Clues is about, it is a middle grade / maybe early YA mystery series. It's very National Treasure-esque. It follows Amy and Dan Cahill, who are these 2 siblings. They're 11 and 14, and they come from a very rich family, but their parents were killed in a fire when they were very young, so now they're under the guardianship of their aunt, who does not treat them very nicely. One person they did find all of their comfort with was their grandmother, Grace, who at the beginning of this first book passes away, and in her will she gives all of the family members the option to either get $1 million or the first clue in this series of 39 clues, which if you find them all, you'll become like the most powerful person. So Amy and Dan start on this quest to try and find the 39 clues, which leads them all around the world. So the way the series works is each book kind of takes them to a different place around the world, and it kind of focuses in on one particular historical figure, which is really cool. So it's kind of a little bit of a history lesson. You kind of get to learn a little bit about each of these places and these people in history. So now I'm going to go through all of the books and my ratings on them. Since I I originally read this book before I ever had like Goodreads or anything like that. I don't have any like original star rating and what it is now. Obviously that now I'm a bit older, I didn't enjoy these quite as much as I probably did originally. I would say that whatever my star rating is now, my original rating would have been 1 star above that, because I still did really enjoy these books, but probably just not as much. Book 1 is The Maze of Bones, which this one was actually written by Rick Riordan, and I gave this book 3 stars. Book 2 is One False Note, which I gave 3 stars. Book 3 is The Sword Thief, which I gave 3.5 stars. Book 4 is Beyond the Grave, which I gave 4 stars. Book 5 is The Black Circle, which I also gave 4 stars. Book 6 is In Too Deep, which I also gave 4 stars. Book 7 is The Viper's Nest, which I gave 4 stars again. Those were all of the books that I had reread. Books 8 and 9, these were my first time reading them, so The Emperor's Code, at this point, like, all the ratings are getting a little bit muddled, so I think I either gave this book 3.5 or 4 stars, and then book 9 is Storm Warning, which I also gave 3.5 or 4 stars, I don't know. Either way, they're all like 3.5, 4-star ratings. I really enjoyed them. Upon rereading these books, I don't think I realized how much I missed or loved these characters so much, because I probably should mention this in the synopsis, but we mainly follow Amy and Dan, but we also sometimes get the perspective of the other family members that are fighting for these clues, and these are the type of family members that would kill each other to get all the power in the world. And while there are a lot of these family member characters who you really hate, there are some that are a little bit sneaky but you really like them. So yeah, I really love these characters and these stories, and I'm super excited to finally be getting a conclusion to this series after so many years, and I am going to be a little bit sad that it's going to be over, because really it's like I've been reading them for many years, because I did think about this series and these characters in between the time of originally reading them and now. So yeah, I really enjoyed this series, and I would totally recommend it to anyone who likes reading middle grade, or even if you just like a little bit of a younger YA, I would totally recommend it. So yeah. So those are all of the books that I read in March. Leave me a comment down below and let me know if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. And yeah, that is all for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!